All right, welcome to episode 17 of Open Betas
Woo!
with Regal and Swimfan. I'm Regal.
I'm Swim Fan.
We are switching off the intro today because Swimfan has a sore throat and a cough.
Yeah.
Yep. So today we're going to
Yeah, it's been tough. It's been tough over here. Let me tell you that. All right, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, so today we'll be talking about some of the viral games that have gone by in our lifetime. Not in the sense of like sudden hype, especially among gamers, but like the games like Solitaire and Minesweeper and Pokemon Go.
The mega mini games.
Yeah.
The ones that for some reason stand the test of time, maybe because they come installed on your computer.
Well, that's definitely part of it, but not all of them did that. Some of the mobile games did do that. We'll basically just be talking through them. There's not really an endpoint in mind. We'll see what we can learn from our discussions.
We can probably make the perfect small game.
Is there such a thing?
Based on what we get to.
Yeah, that's sort of...
No, I don't think there can be.
Yeah, because, the sort of the idea that spawned this was that, like, these games aren't that good, right? They're not like...
Is that what spawned this?
Well, that's kind of my conclusion when I thought about some of these. Like, some of these games are, like, fine, but none of them are, like, exceptional, as far as I can tell. Like, Minesweeper is not...
No, I see what you mean.
Wonderful game, right?
There's some solid games. I mean, well, first let's talk about what we're even talking. There's some solid games. Why don't we define what we're talking about, and then maybe we can hit some examples.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's first go through patch notes though for this week. We talked the last time. There's actually a number of things from the Superpowers episode that I think were maybe worth revisiting. Like, how much exactly do you want to not work in your life? That seems to be a recurring theme.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, a lot.
Yeah. I was, when I was listening back to that, it sort of was surprising to me how much you wanted that, because I don't think that's like any kind of goal for me. Like, at least in my experience, like when I've just sat around and like played games all day, I get like really depressed over time and do not feel good.
I know. And I'm not saying I wouldn't do anything or create anything or work towards goals and such,
right.
But I'm talking more about how much of my time am I going to spend working for somebody else?
Right. That's fair.
On whatever their dream is.
And I guess if we started with that, it would be like, with enough time, if you went back, you could just do your own thing from the beginning.
Yeah. So I'd still be working on something. I think you're right. Like, if I just sit there languishing on the couch, I'm going to be sad. So
on that note, are you planning...
I've tried it.
Are you planning to work towards something now that you're, a billionaire and retired?
Something with animals, but I don't know, really. I'm trying to figure that out.
Okay. All right.
Take care of bigger animals.
Take care of bigger... You can be like that weird guy that collects like exotic animals in Florida.
The Tiger King?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You.
He has like a harem of tigers.
I don't think that's what that word means, but yes, he does have a number of
I haven't seen that, so I'm not sure, but that's what I hear.
Cool. And the other thing that came up during that conversation was about the death notes, right at the very end. And
death notes, patch notes.
Yeah, that's right. Death patch notes. Patch death notes.
Yeah, what about death notes?
I said that I wouldn't use it, but I think that's actually not true.
Yeah, okay.
So
thought about it.
When it comes to things like death notes, which are in our use case, the way we use them is it's basically like a stand-in for like the equivalent of an assassination or a violent revolution, right?
Yeah, with some extra advantages of like anonymity and specificity.
Right. Well, the thing is, like, these people are already like hyper paranoid, and when people start dying mysteriously, even if there's no link, they'll just believe that their enemies killed them, whoever they are, right? Like Stalin was infamous for this. So I would say there. I said that I wouldn't use them because I thought about the most common case people associate with them, which is there's like basically figureheads that come out of bad systems, right? I think we've used this example multiple times, but like oil execs, I think fall into this category where they exist because of capitalist pressures on like oil use and promoting oil use and discouraging things like that. But they, as an individual, they don't have like they're basically easily replaced by exactly the same person who makes the same decisions, right?
Right. You'd really have to go after the system in some way.
Right. And this is true of a lot of really nasty systems. Like I think police in America, right, fall into this category where a lot of it comes down to like the way the police are trained and what they're sort of like how they feel about violence and things like that, and not necessarily any individual person that's like pulling the strings, right?
Yeah, and it's like you may send the shitty murderous cop here to jail or whatever. Exactly. They may be acquitted, but either way, it's not going to change the system.
Right, and that's sort of exactly the point, right? Like, obviously,
not that I'm saying you shouldn't.
Right, obviously you should send, but no one really argues that like, okay, well, if you just arrest all the cops that are bad, then it'll be fine, right? I think people understand that.
We got them.
Yep.
Wait a minute.
But so I think that's my initial reaction. I think about those examples, but I do think the counter situation also exists a lot in the world where it's not just where a single bad actor can actually prop up a really negative system, and removal of a couple of target bad actors can actually take apart that system.
Okay.
I think number one, I think we've also used this example before. Number one is Mr. Putin.
Right? Vladimir.
Yeah, big Vlad the Impaler. That's not true, actually. It's a different person.
Oh, yeah.
But basically, like dictators, sort of cult of personality style dictators really fall into this category, I think, where if you remove them, actually, unironically, a lot of things probably will change in the system. Obviously,
you think so? Oh, interesting.
Maybe
like if you get someone who's so out of control powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you would argue this is sort of the assassinate Hitler argument, right? Essentially,
right.
It's the same idea. So, like Putin, Kim Jong-un, whatever militarist dictator is in like Myanmar right now or whatever, things like that. I do think that those people are in many ways enforcing a system over the will of the people. Oh, of course, this is it's the will of the people, right?
Yes.
Or the will of the system. They're often like exercising control against what would normally arise in I don't want to use the word free, but like a more liberal society in the lower
more typical, like where people have a little bit more say.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I hope so. I mean, I don't know. It's a good point. Like, as The Wire taught us,
I read the synopsis on Wikipedia of season 1 of The Wire recently.
If you just take, you can just take out the top guy at who's the in the gang or the drug dealing pyramid, and there's just another one in the next day.
Yeah,
it
maybe
may be even worse.
I think. So I think that's true in the short term, but I think doing that repeatedly can actually cause problems if the system isn't stable. So like, for example, I think a big difference is that I think the capitalist crude oil machine is extremely stable, right? It's propped up on like every level, and the only opposition to it is like protesters, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Like it's propped up. It's like sound financially, it's sound economically. It's propped up by,
for now it is.
The whole Middle Eastern government apparatus. with all their
A
money.
lot of powerful rich people have a vested interest in it continuing.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
However,
You'd have to really go across the board there to
yeah,
clean that up.
exactly. However, not every system like that. Like I think a gang or a drug cartel is not that stable actually. Like
Really?
if you eliminate the leader, there will likely be some kind of power vacuum and conflict, which will likely produce another leader. But I think
If there's still business, yeah,
right.
I'll be back.
That being said, though, like there's a lot more threats to its existence that it won't be able to overcome, or like it's closer to like falling apart. There's more Jenga blocks missing, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that. It's hard for me to say. Like I don't,
who knows?
yeah, I don't know, but
I guess
I would think some things would fall apart for longer, but without really managing to change the system somehow, things are gonna eventually move back to that state, I would think.
yeah, it depends. It depends on why the system came about in the first place. I guess one way to think about it is, like if you compare the effects of like the Arab Spring to like a comparable protest in like France, for example, right? The amount of, or like the current protests in Iran, it's a little bit different the way, what's the best way to put it? Like the threat the government feels is very different, right? Like in the French, even if
and the ability, the ability to get away with what the government can get away with is a little different in those cases, right?
And I think part of that, not the whole thing, but part of that is that, like, the French political structure in general, the European Western political structure is like stable, like where no one is really afraid of like a armed uprising, or that they would be unable to suppress an armed uprising. Whereas in the DRC, right, the Congo, like an armed uprising is right around the corner, right? So it's just that like while the system, while the goals of the government, and they might nominally have the same amount of control or even more control than the French government, which is like a democratic, there's just more instability built into the system where taking out key parts of it might actually cause it to collapse. Maybe.
But does that create a better?
No, well,
whatever comes next, I don't know.
I think history tells us no, right? Like, I think armed uprisings have not gone very well. Like the Arab Spring has been followed by the Arab Winter.
Yeah, I mean, going back to our original argument, I'd argue that it's not the cause of the violent revolution part necessarily that
I think that's fair.
Leads to that or not, but yeah, most of the time, because power is power, shit can go bad afterwards.
I think one thing that as Westerners we often get wrong is how much support there is for like the traditional family values. We even get it wrong here. Like nobody.
What is that? What's traditional family values?
Well, not necessarily traditional family values, but like lower C conservatism. Like like it's very obvious. I think one example I can think of is like in the Russian Revolution, the communist one, where the first plan was to sort of try to convince the peasants that like obviously the government is evil. Look at all the facts that say the government is evil. But then the end result was the peasants were like, actually, I don't know, the king is the king, right? Like he's blessed by God. Like I don't know, I don't want to overthrow him.
God was, yeah.
And I think we can often underestimate like how much support there is for like the Iranian clergy among people that aren't necessarily publicized in the Western media and things like that.
I think yes. I think another way to interpret that is never underestimate how
the
much
power of the Scouts Code. What?
The Scouts Code. How much we don't want change, and if I am getting by in whatever system is the system, shaking that up often could mean losing what I have or violence in a way that just isn't. There aren't enough examples in my life if I'm one of these people Well, hell, I am one of these people. There aren't enough examples of, if we do this, it'll surely make the world better.
Right.
I know it'll definitely get me in jail or possibly hurt, so I'm not gonna do it. The clergy's fine if my used car dealership's doing fine.
Yeah, that's definitely true. And the other thing is, even if the revolution succeeds or the mass change succeeds, many people who suffer anything as a result then immediately conjure nostalgia, right? And reactionarism,
and it will be worse for some people,
Yeah,
and it will be,
that's sort of the point, right?
And we don't have a system that we can just drop in and say like, oh well, now it's okay and everything's fair.
Well, we tried that in Iraq and that didn't turn out very well.
I mean, did we?
Well, that's also a good argument.
I don't think anyone was really there to build a new nation.
Yeah.
Anyway, should we talk about the life of games?
Yeah, sure.
Tiny games. What are we calling these things? You have many words up here.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't really think there's a great term. Do you have one? You're the marketing guy here.
Well, they're not really. We can't use mini games because that's kind of something different. That's like little games within games.
Mini games, yeah. Viral games, perhaps. Hyper viral.
What'd you say?
Hyper viral games. I thought about the
small
virality
games
of these games. I mean, small games is fine. They're not all like Pokemon Go is not a small game, right?
Well, I mean, it has deepness, but at its core, it's kind of a small game. You walk around and click on the thing.
But
which I think is one of the reasons, the simplicity of the core loop, as they say, is a big part of why I think it does fit here.
I do think,
and its appeal.
Yeah, but it's not also just small games, right? It's sort of small games that have like universal, and in some ways like long-standing appeal. By the way, did you know that Pokemon Go is still like the 7th highest grossing game in the US?
No, but I believe that.
That's kind of insane.
Makes sense.
That looking at that list is a bit depressing, but anyway.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah. What's number one most?
Number one is some random Chinese game, actually. That's globally.
This is the most. Sorry, this is revenue globally, or
yeah, that's
US?
Revenue global. I don't remember. I think number one might have been Candy Crush.
Is that still going?
Oh yeah, it's still big.
It's funny because I over time played a bunch of Candy Crush like games when I was just like playing. God, Bejeweled, is that kind of like that?
I think so. I mean, all the Match 3 kind of games are really the same game, in my opinion.
Snood? Do you remember that?
Huh?
Snood?
Snood? I do not remember that.
That was big when I was in college for some reason.
Number one is apparently Royal Match. So I'm assuming it's like...
Sounds like a Chinese shooter, I'm guessing.
Yes, of course.
Multiplayer shooter.
I don't know if I trust that list. Let's see if there's a better list somewhere.
Royal Match.
US is Candy Crush. Number 2 is Roblox.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. The kids. David.
Kids are kind of a big part. You know, this someone said this to me like a long time ago in high school, but like the iTunes charts are all messed up because like it's only kids that buy music on iTunes.
Oh, that's
It's like it's all like pop.
It is messed up, but if you want to know what the teens like, just look there, I guess.
Yeah. That's who cares what anyone else likes anyway? It's all about the teens.
Let's call them small games for now.
Yeah, sure.
And then I'll think of something better by the end of the episode.
You can use a 3-letter acronym. Perfectly encapsulate the message. So these are games historically that have really had broad appeal especially among non-gamers. That's sort of the only way you can have like massive broad appeal, right? Is to expand beyond the group of people that would normally like your thing to like everybody. Somehow.
Yeah, this is like your mom may be playing this game too, even though she doesn't do that.
Yep. So what are they? Well, we'll start with a quick discussion of like the simplest games that everyone has played, which are like the playground games. But as far as the video games, As for the video games, we have Solitaire and Minesweeper, basically the old Windows default games.
Yeah, Solitaire, Minesweeper, right. My mom plays a version of just a matching Mahjong tile game.
Yeah, that's
that
Mahjong
came with her
Solitaire.
computer.
Also exists. Yeah. It is weird that people play that so much, but I guess it's fun. I don't know.
My mom has been playing it for decades, so
still kicking. It's keeping her brain alive.
Yeah, well, yeah.
And then, so those are the old Windows games. Then the next ones are sort of the old early phone games: Angry Birds, Doodle Jump, Candy Crush.
Yeah, once smartphones came around, this was like a new horizon for these games.
And I looked a little bit into the history of Candy Crush, and it was sort of it came out of social media games, which I had very little experience with, but things like Farmville were big back in the day as well. I remember.
I think I told you we all played some Farmville for for work.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We did an investigation of social games and small e games.
I'd be interested to hear what your results were.
Me too. I'd have to look things up. I don't really remember.
You erased it from your memory, huh? Just wiped
Pretty
it.
much. All I remember is that Farmville. It was fun at first to play with friends and to look at their funny notes or whatever. But then as things, all these games, everything slows way down.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of, just waiting for stuff and checking in again and again. And that, I don't know why, I just have never found that to be a fun type of game. Just feels like work to me.
A lot of these do resemble work in some ways. But yeah, these are the early phone games. And then after that, we have a more recent example, which is Wordle, which I thought a lot about Wordle. Very cool game, actually. And then we have
Wordle's cool.
Pokemon Go, which is actually, I guess, predates Wordle, but we'll leave it for last because we'll have more just to say, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, it is kind of an odd duck here compared to the others in that it's like,
well,
I don't know. I mean, they're all sort of short burst gameplay session things you can kind of pick up and put down and whatever. But I don't know. Just the fact that Pokemon Go is also you walking around, for some reason that makes me feel it's slightly different. But
yeah, it is. It is different, but I think it's very similar to these games in the sense that it's sort of like the first game that hit a new platform, if that makes any sense. The platform being like AR and outside.
Yeah, it is. It's a pioneer in that little bit of gameplay type. Yeah, I guess it is. You're right. It did strike first there, and it still is striking first there.
And I guess we can talk about now, but we have a whole Pokemon Go episode planned.
Yeah.
Soon.
I'm going to try to get my wife on here. Yeah. She's got ideas.
I'd be very curious because, as gamers, as game players, I said my own dirty word. As game players, we tend to be kind of insulated, where I guess you don't fall into this category, but where we sort of talk mostly with people that start with the fundamental assumption that like playing games is fun, which is not a base assumption that probably most people have.
No, No, I wonder what the numbers are these days, but yeah, it's still not like just anyone you can be like, hey, yeah, you play games. Some people are still going to be like, no.
But I guess to tie it back to the current discussion, what people consider playing games now is sort of a different, the fundamental acts are different from the games that we'll talk about now, which those same people might play. So
yeah, which is part of the issue, and I guess it's why the audience of all these things is growing and growing and growing, and it is becoming more normalized to say, I play games, video games, whether or not you're saying the same thing as me, who's playing Lost Ark or whatever, something complicated and mature.
Yeah.
Versus Flappy Bird.
Exactly. Because the what constitutes a game has changed a bit. But yeah, I think at some point everybody that's grown up in like a society where they were not part of child labor or something has played a game of some kind, right? Probably quite frequently. This is how.
Yeah. Even they play games like reach the quota, survive
Well,
the day.
that's. I would say
okay,
that's less entertainment, but yeah, I guess that counts. Yeah. So these are like the core. I think we can.
You're talking about like tag?
Yeah, talking about tag.
All right.
As a child, like everybody had a desire to play games, right? Like I think essentially every single child either played these games or like wanted to play them at some points in their childhood.
Yeah.
I don't hang around children very much, but like I imagine that's still true, right? Because like
I hope so. Seems that way. I mean, the few kids that I know, are always jumping around looking to play some game or another.
Right. And so
can't sit still, these kids.
We don't have to get into sort of what the definition of a game is, but basically these are like sort of pointless entertainment time-filling activities, right? Pointless in the sense that like they don't like generate revenue or something. You're not like acquiring more fruit.
It's just pure entertainment and social bonding. It's like stuff to do with friends.
So if I think about the what these games do, they sort of come out of like almost all of them don't use tools, right? Like the very basic games can be played with like just your body or like a ball, right? Things like tag.
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
Yeah, don't take much. They sort of replicate instinctive behavior in some ways.
There's not like a lot to learn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. However, just like video games, these things increase in complexity as you get older, but as you like play them more, right? The simple versions get boring, and then you come up with rules to make it more interesting. So like hide and seek from my childhood evolved into like hide and go seek, and then evolved into sardines, and then it kept evolving. Not that much farther.
And like freeze tag, or there's some alternate version where there was like a spy tagger or something that we had. I don't know. I remember being one of the kids that was always trying to come up with the new game.
You're a game designer at a young age. Look at you now. I think there is some truth. We sort of set this offhand before, but I think there is some truth to the idea that like everybody can do a little game design.
Sure.
And everybody thinks they know a lot, but I think it's also fair in some ways. Like I don't think a kid that's coming up with a new way to play tag is like they don't know anything, they don't have experience in the industry or whatever. Like I don't know, I think they have some good ideas.
Yeah, I mean his matchmaking algorithm is gonna suck, but he'll get the
to basics. Be fair, they often do come up with really terrible games, but
stupid kids.
Yeah, stupid kids. So these do mirror video games, but these also mirror sports, right? Sports kind of came out of the same idea, like organized sport. Like at some point,
P-sports?
Yeah, P-sports. Like at some point, it was just kick the ball, and then it became like kick the ball into this hole, and then it was like kick the ball into this net, but only one person can stand in front of the net, right?
Yeah, and now we're on ice.
Yep. Exactly. And now, the rule book for P-sports is like 400 pages long, right? But fundamentally, you're still sort of playing the same thing that you were playing on the field as a kid. Sort of.
Yeah, it's fundamentally when you get down to it, all the biggest sports are still fairly simple games, but there's a lot of nuance in them. Yeah. I mean, get the ball into the basket. That's the idea, but there's a whole lot that goes into that, and there's a lot of just intricate rules around everything based on all the different edge cases and such.
And board games are sort of the same way, and video games are also kind of the same way, right? Like I think video games, they're not quite the same because they're sort of like products in a way that P-sports are not, right? Like you buy a video game, you don't necessarily I guess you kind of do, but it's not really the same as like you you don't buy a whole set of new rules for your basketball like every year or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I think games naturally just evolve over time as people get bored, basically, until they sort of reach a point. I think maybe at some point they reach a point where it's like there's enough to learn that people stay interested for like 10 years, and that's good enough if they really want to.
Yeah, I wonder what the sort of evolution of the big P sports are, and how we ended up with what we did.
Yeah, it'd be interesting.
I don't know anything about that.
I think we have it as a future topic idea. I have some thoughts about the way P sports.
Yeah, you like baseball, right?
I like most sports other than basketball.
Yeah, you hate basketball.
I do hate basketball. We can talk about that in the future episode.
Doesn't like orange.
I guess one observation I made was that like a lot of the games follow fundamentally the same idea, right? There's these games where you're trying to there's sort of like the goal games where you're trying to shoot an object into a goal. And then there's like the volleyball, tennis games where you're trying to like do something slightly weird back to your opponent. It's
tennis.
Like if you think about the net in volleyball or tennis, it's sort of it's like totally random, right? Like it's sort of why
it's interesting. It kind of takes the place of the goals, doesn't it? The net.
Kind of. It's sort of like it makes the act of volleying harder, right? It's sort of just an arbitrary it's sort of just an arbitrary game object, essentially, right? That's put in the middle of the field to make it randomly harder. Like, well, you could just hit the ball back, but actually now you need to hit the ball back like over this distance, or else
right, because otherwise you can hit it even harder. Is that the idea? Like it slows down the pace of play slightly? Maybe.
I think part of it is just a skill cap thing, like, or a skill floor thing. Like you need to actually be able to hit this like base part of the skill floor. And then there's like baseball is this totally own thing, and then there's games where you're trying to like advance an object in some direction, which is like American football and rugby.
Yeah, it's close enough to goals, but
yeah, that's fair. It is basically a goal game.
And combat games like punching the other guy until they fall down.
That's good. Did you know there's like World Tag Championships?
And what level? What do you know? Go ahead, tell me.
I just randomly pop like sometimes these like weird sports pop up my YouTube feed for some reason. But yeah, there's a world tag championship where there's like a jungle gym, like an adult jungle gym, and then one person like goes into the jungle gym.
I have seen this. I was just when I was visiting a friend in California, they had the 200 stations of cable or whatever, and one of them was the tag game where it's like a American Gladiators style arena, and they like just run and like leap and really do dangerous things to try to tag each other.
It's not that does not look very safe, but
I'm like I'm pull a hammy.
I think you do a lot worse than that, but
I'd do a lot worse. I'd land on my face.
I
think I've told you before, I'm kind of at the age, and I've been at the age for maybe 15 years, that I'm like, maybe it would be fun to play a sport or something, but it's just, if I hurt myself, it's such a pain in the ass to like, have you ever had a broken bone or something like that? It sucks, right?
Well, I was like 11, but I guess so.
So you loved it? Okay.
I don't remember anything from my brain.
Anyway, I'm a cowardly man who avoids some light physical activity that could be fun when I'm like, I could just easily hurt myself in this thing. It's not worth it to me. Like skiing. I like skiing, but it's so close all the time to me really hurting myself, and I'm just like, you know what? I'll just be in the hot tub. I like that. I'm not going to hurt myself there as easily.
Have you ever heard the credo, you only live once?
I don't think so. No, that's new to me.
Okay, that makes sense. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's sort of a philosopher's interpretation of life, where it's the idea that you only have one life, so you should sort of go
Yeah,
out
you got to be
and
careful. You only have one
well,
life.
that's
Got to be
also
really
true.
careful what you're
Yeah,
doing.
that was my pastor's interpretation, actually.
That's funny.
Um, what were we talking about?
Let's go back. Small games. We got into P sports,
Oh,
physical
got into
sports
P
for
sports
the
thing.
audience.
I had something I wanted to say with your. Well, whatever. It's fine.
No. Come on. What are we? Let's do it. What do you want to say to me?
I don't remember. That's the problem. I would have said it, but.
Oh, okay. Say it to my face, Regal.
Well, your webcam is off, so I can't do that.
You coward.
Oh. Okay. I think that's good enough. Let's talk about Solitaire. So your mom still plays Solitaire.
Yeah, she plays Solitaire. She played Spider Solitaire for a while.
Oh, okay.
Which is just like
My
different
mom plays Spider
version
Solitaire,
of Solitaire.
actually.
Ah, okay, yeah, there we go. Moms unite.
Yep.
Yeah, that she played Minesweeper for a while. Mahjong really is where she found her niche, and also she does like really simple digital jigsaw puzzles sometimes at night. It's like all of these are a quote unquote wind down activity. They're a like I finished my work. I'm going to turn my brain off for 30 minutes and play this game, and space out and listen to music or whatever.
Interesting.
Yeah, and she never played games that required a controller. Like she never sat down and tried to play with the kids. That's not totally true. She used to play Mario Kart 64 for a while with us and with her ex-husband, my ex-stepdad.
Your ex-stepdad?
Oh yeah, I got 2 of those.
Oh, okay, I see.
Yeah. Oh, lots of fun.
That's why
We
she didn't have
skipped
time to
that
play
part in the
games.
swim fan episode. But yeah, she's played those games. She played another game she played is Tetris. She played a ton of Tetris, and I think Tetris may fall.
We really
under
should
here.
talk about Tetris. Yeah, I can't believe I didn't think of that.
Yeah, Tetris is a big one. And I remember I couldn't. It was very exciting for me because I've been trying to get my parents to play games or like look at me doing something for a long time. And so when she started playing the Game Boy game and stuff, I was like, oh, maybe mom's going to play some games. But it was just that one. And I should ask her what it is about that. I guess it probably comes down to just the simplicity of like a board game, or a card game. That and the familiarity of that is a nice entry point versus, I don't know, playing Spider-Man or whatever.
I agree. Yeah. I think there's sort of a couple of things. I think one thing that comes up for Solitaire is, again, like you said, it's sort of a nice encapsulated experience, right? In fact, you can also just quit anytime you want. There's no feeling of dedication. So my mom plays Solitaire mostly as a time fill, like sitting around waiting for something or doing nothing. Just open up Solitaire.
Or like procrastinating.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and she does that too. She guiltily admits that to me all the time.
And so when I hear that, I'm always confused why they don't play something better, right? But maybe, but I think there is a different, like your desire for the kind of game you want to play is different when you're trying to fill time versus when you want to play a game.
I think so, yeah. Because I want to keep it as simple as possible while still engaging.
Yeah. I've had this problem recently. Like I've been trying to get rid of this habit, but like sort of for a lot of people, in fact, for people that don't play games, it's often like social media or something, right? Like you're waiting around for 10 minutes. You need something to occupy your mind. So usually it's like you scroll through your Twitter feed or whatever, or you're through Reddit. I don't do that. So it's hard for me actually to find something else to occupy that time.
Have you ever done that?
Yeah.
Did you stop doing it?
Yeah, I stopped doing it. I stopped using or browsing social media around 2018 or so, 2017. I just like totally stopped using.
Like, just don't use it at all, or
yeah. I mean, I use it to like look at specific things. Like it's not like I have the website's banned on my computer or whatever, but I never browse. I never like scroll.
I've definitely had that. I've tried to cut back considerably, and I've tried to stop entirely many times and never quite succeeded, just because it's such an easy way to, fritter away time.
Yeah, it's really hard to fill that time with something, right? Like, there's not very many things that can fill that time in like a fulfilling way.
Well, and there's an element of like, it's so low. It requires such low level of energy from me, that you're looking for, that I could easily say like, okay, well, I have to fill time where I could go do the dishes or do laundry or whatever, but I'm like, I don't want to do that stuff.
Yeah,
that's
those require like work, right?
I want to like, no pants, lean back. And I think you know what comes next.
Well, I mean, that's not what I had in mind, but okay.
I just want to like click on the thing and see who's mad about what.
Yeah, exactly.
But I hate it. I hate social media. It's bad. I feel bad when I do it.
Yeah, it's hard. It's hard to find a replacement, though. I think that's sort of where it continues to get its niche, and why people like you and me keep going back to it sometimes, right? Because there's not them, like, if you think about the alternatives, right? Why is it so attractive? Well, one thing is like, if you play a game, like a normal game, like, so let's say you happen to have your like Switch or Steam Deck next to you. If you only have 10 minutes, it's a lot of energy to like get into a game that you actually want to play, and then, but also wait for the call you're waiting for, right? Every 3 minutes.
Yeah. You mean because there's more to it, getting into it, and
yeah, I feel like at least there's sort of a layer of like, you need to first get back into exactly where you like try to remember what was going on and looking around, and then there's sort of, I think mentally there's sort of more of a level of like full engagement where you're
shifting gears.
Yeah, exactly. Like, to get into like a more complicated game, you want to enter the zone where you're like fully engaged in it, and not just like tabbing out every 2 minutes. I mean, maybe that's not true, but I think that's generally true for most games that you would play. And you don't necessarily
a lot of games that you
play.
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
A lot of those games have you get you to the step of saying like, all right, what do I do next? Like, what do I want to do next? And making a decision there, versus all these other small game examples don't. Yeah. They never have that. It's just like, you just do the thing.
That's a good point. That's a great point, actually. So a personal anecdote, I've been doing recently is playing chess against bots. Actually, not recently. It's been a long time. But, it sort of gets boring after a while because I'm not like that into chess. So I frequently like browse the App Store to look for something that's sort of more stateless, like chess. One of the nice things about chess as a game for me is that like at any point I can just return to a saved, not necessarily a save game, but like a game that's in progress, and sort of evaluate it from the information that's there. Like, there doesn't need to be any remembering of anything else that's going on contextually.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
And Solitaire and Minesweeper are also both like that, right? Like, you never need to plan ahead necessarily, or even if you did, you can just, it's very easy to reacquire those plans by.
Yeah, they're all match based isn't the right way to say it, but they're, single sitting experiences each time.
Right. And all the information you need is right there on the board, right?
Yes.
It contains, as long as you know the rules, you can just reacquire your context from just looking.
Yep. Simplicity.
Yeah, and so that's a thing that's hard to find in a lot of other games, even other puzzle games. So, for example, a game like Sudoku is harder to do that with. It's still close, but you do need to remember a lot more about like what your expectations were for the square or whatever, right?
Oh, do you? Some people like that as a real time fill activity.
Yeah. I mean, that's fine, but I think, at least for me, like, I feel like there's a bit of difference there. And of course, like, Um, there's sort of like the more mobile games. I have an issue with them for this purpose because they're sort of time gated, where it's like you can't just play as much as you want in one sitting. You sort of have to, it's sort of the opposite, where you have to play a certain amount of time per day, but once you're done with that, you can't play more.
Yeah, generally from a lot of mobile games, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't play mobile games anymore for the most part.
Yeah.
So I don't see it, but occasionally with my other gamer friends, like when I went to see friends in California, they were all playing Marvel Snap
Ew.
and yeah, and games like better games that I can't remember the names of, but they looked complicated, but they were all like, you know, I got to check in once a day, do all
Right.
the things, and then I'm done for now.
Right. And that's, that's a fine, well, I guess it depends on your point of view, but like generally speaking, that's like a fine paradigm, but it definitely does not fill the niche that a solitaire does, right? There's like
No,
a very specific type of game that can fill this desire.
yeah.
And with that in mind, maybe at some point someone should make better games that can fill this need, right? Because
Yeah, you know, there are other things. Here's something else. Here's something. Uh, None of these games require a console or a launcher, like a Steam type thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for most part, mobile games are like you click the app and you're in.
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Sometimes they try to put like a game center over it, and it sucks. But yeah, it's that simplicity. Because I'm thinking a game like Vampire Survivors is really pretty simple. It does have a very video gamey feel that these other things don't, but I'm like, it is buried in Steam. You know, I don't know. Would people play that game more if it were under the games menu in Windows?
I've never played Vampire. Well, maybe actually, but I never played Vampire Survivors. The specific game, I've played a couple of knockoffs. I would say it's a little different in a couple ways. One is, you actually need to remember what you were doing, kind of, right? Because you sort of want to pick upgrades that are related to your existing upgrades.
Yeah, and it is match based, but the matches are long.
Yeah,
they're too long.
It's a game where I feel like, at least, and maybe people that play more don't agree, is that I feel like it's a game where you don't want to just drop it at the drop of a hat. No pun intended.
I think you're right. Yes. I don't think you can pick it up, put it down and pick it up like that.
Yeah. I mean, there's surprisingly, that's a surprisingly tight constraint for a video game, right? I mean, it's very hard to make a game where you can do that and also be fulfilling in other ways.
You know, this is interesting to think about. Maybe this is a real core part of what these small games are. The perception of it can take as little time as I want.
Yeah.
Like I may end up playing for 2 hours, but the idea that when I start, I'm not going to be like, all right, I got to remember what I was doing. I got to plan what I'm going to do next. I got to do all this before I can get to the fun stuff or whatever. It doesn't have any of that. It's all like, no, it'll just be 10 minutes. And of course it's not just 10 minutes, but we can tell ourselves that.
But you can plan for 10 minutes, but it could be either 2 minutes or 2 hours, and both of those still work fine within the constraints of the game, right? Like if something comes up in 2 minutes, you're also fine. And if it takes 2 hours,
it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Yeah, neither situation feels bad or has consequences, really.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it would be interesting at some point to brainstorm what other like game paradigms can fill this, and I'm sure many do. And I think maybe this is part of why puzzle games, like almost all of these games, are puzzle games in some way, actually, or what we would consider to be puzzle games.
Yeah, more or less. I mean, other than Pokemon Go, I guess.
Other than Pokemon Go, yeah. But for the most part, yeah, it would be interesting at some point to brainstorm kind of how to fit a paradigm into this need. Or
and that's not totally true. Like when we were talking about Flappy Bird, Doodle Jump, Angry Birds, all these are
Angry Birds is a puzzle game.
Puzzly, but they're kind of just like actiony fuck around games.
Well, Flappy Bird is just, I mean, this is sort of getting into semantics, but I would call Flappy Bird just a mini game, right? It's not really there's not really anything to do. It's sort of just a basic skill check, right? It's like a
it's a weird one because it's not like a
check.
good game. It was like a weird viral game.
Yeah. We'll talk about
it. Angry Birds is, there is some precision or whatever, and you get to decide which bird to throw and stuff like that. But I don't know. Calling it a puzzle game seems like a stretch.
Sure. But they're all sort of like, they sort of tease your brain a little bit, right? Like they present you with a sort of like a contained math or quasi-physics geometry problem. Board problem, and you try to solve it, right? Or Solitaire is sort of like this. In the case of Solitaire, it's more like an organizational problem, right? Like put these things in order. But I think the most important thing with these games is what you mentioned at first, which is just they came pre-installed on Windows, right? Like,
I mean, that is a big part of it. Like just the ease of access.
Yeah.
But well, actually, all of them. I'd say smartphone games kind of fall under that, right? Like it's not necessarily preloaded. Like that would be an interesting thing, but. Although I guess I'd be surprised if Candy Crush isn't preloaded on some phones.
No, I'm sure it is. Yeah.
But it's easy. It's pretty easy to just search the thing and then click the button and then you got it. And generally, it's not like a PC game where you have to make sure your rig can handle it and you got to tweak the settings or whatever. That stuff's like the death knell to any of these. Anybody trying to play a small game.
By the way, did Activision own King while you were there?
King is I don't remember. They're the Candy Crush people?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I don't think so. Did they?
I don't know.
Nah, not that I remember.
I don't know when the merger happened. But also King is known as like one of the most evil companies, like video game companies ever. So it's a good fit.
Even more evil? What
they're like very litigious. Like they just randomly sue indie companies for no reason. Just they like target companies that don't have the legal fees ability to fight back, and they just like
they just have to fold.
Sue them for whatever reason.
That's fun. That's fun. Activision does a lot of shit like that too.
So that's why I said it's a good fit. What were we talking about? Yeah, so I think a big part is that comes in. So one thing is when you're trying to fill this time with a mobile game, like a bigger mobile game, like a gacha game, something of that nature, one big barrier is they take a long time to start on a phone.
Oh, do they?
Well, I mean, it depends, but generally, in my experience, they do.
Is it like a loading or connecting to server kind of thing?
Exactly. Because they have they're like complicated, right? They have a lot of assets that they have to load or whatever.
Oh, right. Yeah. You download updates constantly. Yeah. Right.
And so that also is similarly a big barrier compared to Solitaire, which I guess part of the draw is that you just start it up instantly, right?
No patches. That'd be funny though.
So I was just thinking of something on my Windows, on my old Windows computers. Like obviously these games came preloaded, but also like a couple of like random sample music files came preloaded.
Oh?
Do you think those also got famous? Or do you think people just ignored them?
Probably just ignored them from what I know.
You'd think so, right? That would
what
be...
game? What are you talking about? Like, do you have an example?
There was Windows ME, I think, or and like with Windows Media Player, there was like 10 sample songs that came with And they were like
like
licensed,
like
like actual songs.
licensed popular songs,
I think one of the artists was like Beck or something.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
I don't recall.
I know there was the what are they called? The Bono people?
U2.
Yeah, you too. There was that thing where for at one point all Apple products or iPhones came preloaded with their new album. And people didn't like that.
I wonder how much they paid for that.
Oh yeah, probably a lot.
Like,
although maybe Apple was just wanting to just get engagement off of it.
Yeah, that's sort of complicated, right? Because it's hard to know which way the negotiations go when it's a relationship like that. Because like, you would think that if you were an actual game company, having your game preloaded on a computer or these days on like a new phone would be big, but I don't know if it really is. Like, I don't know if that's necessarily the best way to grow your brand.
I mean, it's certainly for like a regular gamer person sounds annoying, right?
Yeah.
Like, yeah, don't preload shit.
But also
here.
The point is that these games are appealing to like moms, right? So maybe that's sort of where.
Are these just mom games? Is that what we're?
I think so. I mean, that's sort of that is sort of the premise, right? Where it's like these are games that like stretch beyond normal games. But the thing is, like, normal gamers also played these games at some point, right? Like, I played all of these games. People got really good at Minesweeper too.
I played a ton of Minesweeper.
Yeah.
I wish I hadn't, but I did.
I mean, when you're young, there's just not much stuff to do, right? Especially when there weren't better games that you could acquire.
I guess. I mean, yes, but there's. I could have read a book.
Well, could you have though?
No.
Yeah, that's. I struggle with that a lot as a kid.
Watch a movie.
Like, I would look at like GBA games would track your playtime mostly on your save file, and I'd just look at the number go up and feel bad. And then my friend was like, I would like tell my friend like, man, I could have spent these like 28 hours doing something else. And he just looked at me like I had 3 heads, as they say, and it was like, you would have just spent it playing another game. It took me a long time to understand that, but now I'm just like, yeah, that's true. Like,
yeah, I'd fuck around in some other way. I mean, that's
as a human, there are some people that this doesn't apply to, but pretty quickly you learn that you can't just work 24 hours a day. Like, you simply cannot
most people
do that.
Can't.
It's not that you're lazy for not doing that. It's not that you don't have ambition. It's just that you physically can't do that. Like, your mind will melt.
And it's like most people, you already have shit you got to do all day. People you got to deal with, or families you got to take care of. That if I have a little time to myself and my brain is fried, I want just something really dumb and easy to do.
Right.
To spend a little me time,
Right. Yeah. So playing Minesweeper is not so bad. A lot of like people that play game, like streamers or competitive players or whatever. I don't know about a lot, but I know at least 1 or 2. Like, were at some point really good at Minesweeper. One of them recommended it for like clicking training, like in Dota or League of Legends. If you're having trouble, or if you're misclicking a lot, like you're miscasting your spells or whatever, you can practice the Minesweeper by trying to.
I mean, it certainly builds up some of that. Yeah. I never miss skill shots.
Yes, well, I only miss if the enemy was stupid and didn't dodge correctly.
The enemy made the wrong decision.
Yeah, that's right.
And I didn't hit him. You're playing wrong.
It's true.
Yeah, I love that. That's always a fun conversation.
All right. So, mobile games, Flappy Bird. Actually, let's take a quick detour into Tetris.
Yeah.
I mean, Tetris,
that's a mobile game. That's a handheld game.
Is it though?
Yeah.
Really?
What?
Well, it's a handheld game. Is it a mobile game? Like, would you play Tetris without buttons on a touchscreen?
Oh, well, yeah, people don't though, do they?
I feel like it would feel really bad because I think sort of the not having the tactile feedback would be rough.
Yeah, and you know what? Because you also have to move left and right, it would be tough with touch controls. Doable, but yeah, not the same speed and accuracy as those chunky buttons.
Yeah. And I think one of the things is when it comes to playing these games, like the players, even though they're not quote unquote traditional game players, like they still want to win, and many of them get pretty good at the game, right?
Yeah.
So it's not really like they're just there to like fail miserably and laugh and like kill time. Like winning and being good at it is also still part of the attraction. Or part of the goal.
Yeah, like feeling like you're improving, you mean? Yeah, I think so. You get high scores in Tetris and all that. Yeah. I think it's still... I think it doesn't matter that much, though.
Yeah, for sure. There's no rank
how you do, like... If I fail to get the final matches in my Mahjong game again and again, I may not be as satisfying, but... I'll still do it again.
Do you play the Mahjong Solitaire?
I played it a little back in when I was a kid, or high school. I don't know. You know, there was a version of that exact game on the Sega Master System that I played a lot of.
Oh, interesting.
With a controller, which is truly awful because it was a directional pad to move the mouse around. That doesn't
sound great, but could be worse.
But I played a lot of it. Oh yeah.
Did you?
I learned all about the tiles. I don't know what they actually do in like Riichi Mahjong, but I know what they look like. I know the red dragon. Green dragon.
What are you talking about? Oh, Tetris. So yeah, I think it's sort of, I think if it could somehow have been turned into, because it was a browser game actually when I was in high school. A lot of people played it.
Tetris?
Yeah. Like there was like various browser versions of Tetris that people played a lot.
I mean, they release new versions still. I think it does fairly well. Like the Tetris 99 has some popularity.
Yeah, it does. I think at this point in society, it's a little hard if it doesn't go on your phone, though, right? For people.
What do you mean hard? Like hard to get to this level?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think any time you got to sit down at a PC or console and have it, well, I mean, but we're contradicting that with all the preloaded games, aren't we? Like Solitaire.
I think if Solitaire came out at this point preloaded on your computer, it wouldn't have the same effect. That would be my hypothesis.
What if Tetris did? Well, yeah. So yeah. You know, another thing is a lot of these games came on your computer before the internet, right?
Exactly.
Like before other options were widely available.
Right.
So, yeah, and now the state of things is more mobile games, like you say. And my understanding is the big games keep being big because they're on top of all the charts, and it's like the place you look when I'm like, I just want to play a game. What do? I'll just look at the most popular games and pick one.
That's sort of what Vagar said, right, in our brief conversation about this.
Did he?
Yeah, that like, well, I think he was supposed to talk about ads, but I think charts are very much the same, right? Where for mobile games, people literally, they don't really enter the ecosystem per se. They literally just like see an ad and click on it.
It's daunting. I mean, it's just like a sea of games.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, unless my friend tells me you got to play this.
That exactly.
What else am I supposed to do?
That's exactly what it is. And I think the tools are bad. At least I think the Google Play Store is quite bad at making actually reasonable recommendations.
Oh, really?
Because
you mean? Go on.
Because, well, first of all, like most of the Rose recommendations are ads, but even the ones that are not ads, I think they're like very heavily weighted towards popularity, which means the games that have ads are also the ones that show up in the ones that are not ads, because the ones with ads are the most popular.
Yes.
There's a lot less weight than I think there should be. That being said, it's very hard to measure this on like actual similarity or actually games you might like or things that may be less known that you would like. I think Steam does a good job of this, for example. Like I'm always quite happy with Steam recommendations for the most part.
Like the personalized recommendations.
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, me too. They're good.
Or like the games that are similar to this game. I think those are also generally quite good. But yeah, I feel like at least on the Google Play Store, it's just whatever gets advertised is what's shown to you. And you like, can't
and I
even
think if
find
we're
other
getting,
stuff.
and I think getting to that level where there are recommendations for you, it's just the audience for these games is not.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll reach that point.
I think that's true.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's true.
I think I wonder if it's a level of complication, but I wonder if it's also just a level of like, well, that's not me getting to that level of being into games.
Yeah.
There's like something icky about it or scary about it.
I think so. I think that's definitely part of it. If you sort of imagine, this isn't even necessarily just moms or old people. It's just like people who may self-identify as normies or basic might just be turned off of those things like fundamentally.
Yeah, I think so. Or they have no attraction to them. So when they see those elements, they're just like, this is too much.
And I wonder, I wonder if that's like a mental barrier or if they actually feel that way, which is why I'm interested to talk to your wife and see what the experience.
Why she doesn't like games?
Well, what about Pokemon Go was the turnoff exactly? Which parts?
Oh, you mean when we stopped?
Yeah. Or when you were still playing. I mean, I imagine while you were playing, there were plenty of turnoffs too.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it on that episode. Yes.
Oh, I wanted to mention one thing. One of the big through lines for these games that I didn't think about before was they're all very like sort of procedurally generated, right? In like the most basic, in like the literal use of the term.
Okay.
So almost all of these games are sort of infinitely replayable in the sense that, you know, you're never necessarily playing the exact same game twice ever, even if the rules are always the same.
Yeah, you can shuffle the deck and it feels new.
There's no I think one of the things, like, there's no memorization, right? You're sort of making decisions based on what pops up in front of you, and the, you know, cards obviously is part of that. Tetris is like that, right?
Shapes, yeah. We got shapes, we got numbers, we got words. Like we come into these games knowing those things already, right?
Exactly. And so it's more about like learning to react rather than predicting, and like learning a lot of memorization, which is that's sort of what happens if you play the same like RPG over and over, right? It's more about using your knowledge of the whole game. In other words, speedrunning, right?
Yeah.
It's more like using your knowledge of the whole game to sort of, you know, go faster or craft your experience, but you don't really expect it to be different. Whereas these games, I think, are like almost the exact opposite.
So why? So there's also like a level of. So Tetris confuses me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because it requires fast thinking and it speeds up, and it's got you got to hit the button. The faster you hit the buttons, the better you're going to do. Whereas most of these other games, that's not the case.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think that's true. Is Tetris a time filler?
Oh, I think so, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, when it was big on Game Boy, I mean, that was the game my mom and my dad played sometimes. Just like, rather than reading a book in bed, play that.
Okay.
Before going to sleep, kind of thing. But it's weird to me that why does that game succeed, whereas like mom wouldn't want to just play Pac-Man, right? Even though there's a similar like randomness to. I mean, there's not really, but yeah, I guess there's not though. Maybe because once you play it, it's the same each time.
Maybe, Yeah, I think that's.
But there seems to be like light reaction games where it shouldn't be that hard to get this audience into them, but they don't. They don't. I don't know why.
I think they maybe could have. Like, I can think of some I guess it's, yeah, that's a good point. It sort of depends on the context, right? Because I can think of some examples of like people who don't really play games having mentioned that they used to play a lot of like an arcade game, but I think that's mostly because they used to hang out at an arcade.
Yeah, or machines that were at restaurants and bars.
Yeah.
Like Pac-Man is one of those. Space Invaders.
You know what
my
I
parents
also
talk about.
just thought of is that a lot of these games, most of these games don't have like characters.
Yeah, they're simple.
Yeah, they're
Very
so simple
No,
that they either
there's no
have
story,
like,
no characters.
yeah, like Flappy Bird has like a character, quote unquote, but it's just an image, right? Angry Birds is sort of the same.
Yeah,
Tetris is sort of the same. Whereas, Pac-Man, I guess, more has like violence, even if it's like extreme cartoon violence, but there is like a level of like game in there where
yeah.
you're like fighting something and there's enemies. I don't know if that matters.
Yeah, and there's like a tension of it too.
Mm-hmm.
There's to that point, like you don't want to die and gotta time your power pellets right and stuff like that. But I guess I'd argue that Tetris has some of that pressure too. So
it does.
anyway.
Yeah, you can lose in Tetris. I guess you can lose in most of these games, but
You don't see your little guy die though.
yeah, that's certainly true. Yeah, Tetris is interesting. I think maybe one thing is I do think maybe, can you think of other games like Pac-Man that like they wouldn't have gotten into? Because like there's the whole generation of like the Pac-Man like arcade style games, like the bouncy one and like the spaceship one, things like that.
Like Defender and
I mean, I don't know.
games like that.
Those things predate my existence, so. Galaga,
bouncy
maybe,
one.
is what
I wonder what you mean by the bouncy one.
the one where like you have
Donkey Kong?
you have a pallet at the bottom, a
Mhm.
breakout, maybe
Oh, yeah. Brick Breaker, Breakout,
break, yeah,
Arkanoid.
Arkanoid, yeah, there you go.
It has many names.
I see, yeah,
Yeah, that's actually a good example. The Arkanoid game, because that kind of falls in that category
I
too.
agree,
But
yeah.
but it's another one that really requires like a specialized controller, or
Well,
it's not.
I mean, so does Tetris, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I can see one difference, and this may be wrong because I never played like any of the originals, but those games are like level based, right?
Yes.
Where there's sort of set and designed levels for a lot of them, and not saying that this is like a death knell. There's popular mobile games in this too, but there's like set design levels. Things feel like mostly the same, and there's like an end maybe that comes somewhere down the horizon, so it doesn't necessarily feel replayable. Maybe it's a hypothesis.
Yeah, or maybe there is some distinction of when there's levels that you recognize each time going through that. I don't know, makes the game feel longer.
Maybe.
The perception of it being longer
I
than
think
rather
so.
than I'm just getting in that 5-minute thing or whatever.
Yeah. And it's not, again, I think there's a number of level based games that can succeed. Like there's like a lot of like Angry Birds level based, right?
Yeah,
but I do think there is a difference in the way they're sort of internalized, perhaps.
and there's just, as I recall, there's just so many levels. It just feels like it's randomized almost.
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
I played a lot of Angry Birds. I don't know about you.
Really? I played a little bit. I played more other games in that era. Angry Birds never really
Yeah,
struck
when
my fancy.
smartphones were just starting to be a thing, I played some of the big ones, and Angry Birds was probably that, and Words with Friends. Scrabble. I played a lot of.
We could talk about.
But
Let's talk about Words with Friends.
sure.
To be fair, this doesn't really count because it's literally just a port of a board game, right? So
yeah,
it's kind of,
it is interesting.
it's just like putting a
I
board
mean-
game online so you can play with your friends.
And I guess Wordle is, a little more than that. It's kind of just a version of board games turned into a video game. Like it's It's a very Boggle Scrabble type
Wordle?
thing. Sorry?
Did you say Wordle?
Yeah, isn't it?
I actually think Wordle has a couple of very well. It is to the point, but I think Wordle has a lot of key differences from Scrabble that make it that kind of sort of contributed to its success.
Yeah,
How interesting it was
Go
to
on.
play. I think the big one. I think Wordle was a very well designed game. It's like actually very elegant.
And it can do the thing with the hints that you couldn't do in a board game in the same way.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. I mean, the hints is basically Mastermind, right? If you ever played Mastermind, so it is possible.
Yeah.
But it's like a neat little puzzle game. But I think the big key difference it did was, so in Scrabble, you're rewarded for knowing these like weird esoteric words, right? You like put some letters together and you're like, this sounds like a word. And you look it up and it's like, that's technically a word. I get points.
I'm one of these guys. This is my problem with Scrabble. Is that
Yeah.
And that's what bounced me off of Words with Friends in the end. Was I'm playing against a bunch of people who are just typing in the words and submit, typing in the words submit until they get something.
Yes.
And I'm like, this is fun for you?
Yes, exactly. And this is not just a Scrabble problem. This is a problem with, I mean, I guess people don't think this is a problem necessarily, but this is a thing with like a lot of word games. Like if you've played, there's a game called like Wordscapes that's very popular.
I've heard of it, but I don't.
There's like Alpha Bear, which was popular back in the day when it first came out.
Oh, Wordscapes. Yeah, I played that.
Yeah. So these games that reward you for remembering a breadth of words, I think run into the exact problem that you felt, which is like, I don't like these are not like quote unquote word games. These are not words that I know. Right? This is like esoteric knowledge, or it's just putting in random things that sound like they might be a word.
Well, with Wordscapes,
Wordscapes
generally
better. Wordscapes is a little bit better, yeah. But
because generally they were pretty good at like, okay, I've heard of all these words,
right, yeah.
Which has always been my house rule with Scrabble. I'm like, if you're gonna put a word, you have to already know the word. You have to know what it means,
right?
There's no like, let me look this up in the Scrabble dictionary.
It's pool.
You have to know the fucking word.
It's like pool. We have to call which hole you're aiming for. Otherwise, it doesn't count.
Well, it's just like if you're looking. Anyway, I'm a big whiner about this.
Yeah. So no, I actually agree completely though, which is why I think Wordle was so elegant, because it is a word game that rewards you for knowing words, but it limited itself intentionally to only I don't remember the number, but like the 5,000 or 50,000 or whatever, like most common 5-letter words.
Okay.
And I think
that's great.
Yeah, exactly. And what that kind of allowed the player to do was to never open up a second source or feel like I need to come up with like a novel word or a new strategy, right? Every step of the Wordle process, unlike in Scrabble, is all about like looking at what's in front of you and what's in your head. You don't have to know anything else. You don't have to look up any words. You don't really have to guess necessarily.
Yeah. And in fact, you can't.
Right. You can't. Or if you do guess, you just
But there's
lose.
no advantage to it, I guess is what I'm saying.
Right. I mean, yeah, you guess like random words, but there's like a limited number of turns that punish you for doing so.
Yeah.
So the problem with Wordle was also solved by the other part, which is Wordle has a problem where the domain of word, it can't be like a Wordscapes type game because there's only like 5,000 words, I think, that like fit their criteria. Maybe it was 50,000. Anyway, it's like a very small number. It's like free cell sized.
Yeah, there's another one.
I wish I remembered the number exactly. But anyway, it's not really big enough to turn into a full-fledged game, which is why they didn't really let you play repeatedly. Because you would very quickly start running into the same words that you've run into before. But by making it, so to solve that problem, they made it like once per day, right? And making it once per day also helped create this like ritual aspect, like social media sharing aspect, like today's Wordle, right? Became like a thing.
Yes, there's a shared societal experience of today's Wordle, which is kind of similar to the ongoing today's crossword
Yep.
thing, but I think that's much more involved, I guess.
Yeah, much more involved. And I actually think crosswords are kind of dumb because they're very arbitrary.
Of course you do.
They're poorly defined, of course.
They're so arbitrary. It's like they can just decide to write whatever they want.
Well, yeah.
I love crosswords. Maybe no surprise. I adore crosswords.
I don't mind crosswords, but yeah, I think the first,
my wife and I do
like,
them together.
the second time I reach a hint that I think is stupid, I just bounce off crosswords for like a year. I get mad.
You're just like, this is a bad hint.
This is a bad hint. Yeah, it is a bad hint. You know what?
Yeah, I think you have. Yeah, anything that gives Regal an option to have like a value judgment on how the thing was presented is dangerous.
Was it a catch or was it not a catch?
I mean, that's part of the fun, but it is also part of the, like, you're right, it's part of the frustration of like, that fucking clue makes no sense. Like, what are you talking about? Little shorts.
So in baseball, this is a big tangent here. In baseball, I can't wrap my head around the fact that a large contingent of players and fans don't want so you know about the ball and strikes in baseball, right? There's like a strike zone, and if your pitch is like inside the zone, it's a strike, and if outside, it's a ball. I can't wrap my head around the fact that like a large contingent of players and fans don't want this to become automatic with a computer. Like
what's automatic?
Making the ball, it's called automatic balls and strikes. So they basically put up a camera, and instead of having an umpire like look at the ball and like call a strike, they have an automated umpire that basically decides it through a camera, right?
Why don't they do that?
Yeah, I can't understand why anybody would think this is a bad idea, but a lot of people think it's a bad idea and don't like it.
Huh. Is it just removing the human element?
So that's part of it.
And the tradition of it? Or?
I think that's a big part of it. The tradition is a big part of it. The human element is a part of it. I think that generally the argument is like there's sort of a, like the technically defined strike zone is not the actual human strike zone. So it's like, you're supposed to throw like a little bit out in this direction is okay to a human umpire, but it's not okay to a robot. To which I'm just saying, like, I don't know, man, just adjust.
Yeah, just fix the robot.
Either fix the robot to match what you're saying, or follow the new rules because they're consistent, right?
Isn't like the umpires and referees are like the core problem with all P sports, isn't it?
I think so.
Because at the end of the day, you have a human who has allegiances or opinions, or whatever. You know, a truly fair-minded person is, it's hard to get and to know that you have them and all that. They make mistakes.
Yeah. To be fair, I think I don't really think, at least in American sports, that the allegiance of the referees is ever realistically called into question. There was like one case in the NBA of like a referee betting on a game, I think, but in general, like, I don't think that's a problem. I think the mistakes part is the big problem, right?
I find that hard to believe, but I don't know that no referees are bought off secretly ever.
I don't think so. No, not actually. I actually find it pretty easy to believe because
why?
Because this is like, if you want to do something. If you want to perform corruption, you don't want to do it on a thing with like billions of eyes on it, right? And you don't want it. And I think there's not that much to gain from buying off a referee in general.
An individual referee.
From a monetary perspective. Like, if you're going to perform corruption that can land you in jail, like, you want to do it.
There's better ways to do it.
Yeah, you want to do it on like, the Iowa grain storage facility or whatever, right? And like leech money that way. You don't want it to be on the Super Bowl where literally like 500 million people are on you. Yeah,
but some people get a big charge out of sports and think it's, the Super Bowl is way more important, and I want to get one over on that scale. I don't know. I'm just talking out of my ass here. I'll believe you because you know way more about this.
But there are, it's not like I'm saying corruption in referees never happens. In fact, I think in soccer, there's literally an ongoing referee put like conflict of interest scandal right now in like Barcelona, I think, or something.
Yeah, it's okay.
So I'm not saying it never happens, but I do think in general it's much harder to do than you might think, and the fairness of referees is seldom realistically called into question, I think, from an evidence.
But the accuracy
is,
or the
I mean, they make mistakes all the
mistakes.
time, right? Like multiple times a game, there's clear and obvious mistakes that are made. I mean, you sort of accept it, but if you can fix it, I don't understand why
consistency it's strange to me. It seems strange to me too. Are there stated reasons they don't want?
Yeah, I think the main one is that like it's different, or is like there's like human flexibility and like context that's missing from the machine. I think is the one that's most often stated. I just think that's a nonsense reason.
But a human could look at the video or whatever and decide.
It's actually on the TV. So what's kind of funny is that like the TV feed will show the strike zone and like where the ball landed.
Yes.
And so, but the umpire makes the call without looking at that. They make the judgment call essentially.
That's part of the game.
It is, I guess. I know, it's baffling to me.
Yeah, that I don't get it either, but I'm no sportsman.
So anyway, Wordle. How do we get there from Wordle?
You tell me.
We're talking about crosswords. Yeah. So.
And using crosswords.
And sort of like that's sort of like the human element, right? In a Wordle, in like a word game, especially, but in Wordle, like the rules are clearly defined and enforced by the machine and consistent. Whereas I tend to get annoyed with crosswords because I find the hints to be sometimes nonsense because they're written by inferior humans.
I see. Yeah, I see the connection, and that makes sense. Yeah. I get that. Wordle is untarnished by human decisions and references, frames of reference.
Sudoku, I guess Sudoku versus crosswords is a better example of that, where it's like there's like clearly outlined rules for one of them, or for both of them, I guess, but one of them requires you to think about what the other human is thinking about, rather than
and I guess I like that.
Machine.
I guess I like that element more.
Right.
Like my brain has fun when it comes to like working with letters and words, but anything working with numbers, there's like a aversion to it in my brain. Like I always am not having fun if I'm doing a number task.
Yeah, that's understandable. I think a lot of people
but for some people they love it. Yeah.
I don't know if
some people it's the exact opposite, where they don't want to deal with words and letters. They prefer thinking about number puzzles and stuff.
Yeah, I would say, the distinction probably isn't necessarily binary. I do think there's I think there's like a fear that's instilled. I've actually noticed this mostly in America. Like I have a hypothesis that it's like education system related, where there's like because I feel like I've seldom encountered this outside of America, where just there's like this aversion, as you said, to doing any kind of math. Like as soon as math pops up, American or like the certain type of American will try to find any excuse they can to turn it into like a logic problem or a reasoning problem.
Yeah.
Rather than
wonder why that would be.
Arithmetic.
Which is weird because it's not. I mean, like in school, I learned that math. I did arithmetic in my head all the time. Right. I placed high in AP math courses and all that shit. But now I'm like, looking back, I'm like, I don't want to do that. I so badly don't want to do that. Yeah. If I have to your point, like if I have an out, literally, like if I don't want to calculate the total on my fucking receipt, sometimes I'll be like, I'll hand it to my wife and ask her to do it. But she's the kind of person that's like excited to complete the equation. So
okay, well it
works out.
See, that's a very weird binary. Just like I feel like most people I know are in the middle, where it's like there's no distinction between what is a number, what is a math problem, what is not. Right? It's just a problem that you solve using, brain almonds.
Yeah, they just feel like real different parts of my brain.
Yeah, I wonder why.
And one of them, when I'm engaging it, my body, my
Your body
soul
shuts
is
down.
resisting.
Yeah.
My soul is like going.
This happened. Actually, we encountered this before. I asked you to estimate like a value, and you kind of like shut down and said like 10 billion years or whatever.
I did,
Was kind of
yes.
funny.
I remember. I totally stonewalled you.
Okay, Pokemon Go.
Excuse me.
Pokemon Stop.
Wait, we're talking more about that?
Pokemon Go?
Yeah, on this episode?
Yeah, a little bit. I just want to talk about like how it became successful. Well, like I said, we'll talk about it more next episode. We have you and your wife who played it for how long?
Many years, like at least 5 years at least.
Oh, wow, 5 years. That's a long time.
I think 4 or 5. Because, yeah, I mean, we go on a lot of walks and stuff, and that just was a nice way to have more stuff to do during it, or often to extend the walk, because it's like, well, let's go over to this place we've never been because there's a gym there.
Different kind of gym, but
yes,
it's very similar.
Not a pea gym.
Yeah, gym. And then I've also done a little bit of quote unquote research, which just means I watched a couple of YouTube videos from community members about the history of Pokemon Go. We'll talk more about like the decision making, the downfall, although I don't think it was so much downfall. I think this happened with the regular Pokemon game too. I think it's actually unrelated, but there's a lot of frustration among players that I think can often be glossed over in the actual company as long as the revenue flows in, even if the revenue went down, right?
Right, as long as it's still quote unquote working.
Yeah, it's still. I mean, it is still like the 6th highest grossing game in the US.
People are getting paid,
which I guess is all that's important. It kind of goes back to show that it's like pretty hard to kill a successful product, right? It takes a long time, just because of.
This is a total side note, but I want to remember it. Sometime I want to discuss what we think games would look like if, outside of capitalism, if money were not a issue in any sense.
I think about this a lot.
What games would look like.
I think some about what society will look like if we didn't have needs.
So well, I mean, yes, there's that whole discussion.
In other words, the question is, what does the economy of heaven look like?
But anyway, let's move on. Let's not do that now. Pokemon Go.
Yeah. Anyway, so like the revenue dropped precipitously, objectively speaking, right after some poor decisions, but it didn't drop precipitously enough that it quote unquote mattered in the end, right? So.
Do you know what those decisions are?
Yeah, it's in this video. We'll talk about them next time, I guess, like specifically what happened. But as far as the initial wave of success, right? I do think it actually counts sort of like smartphone launch, where it allowed players to play games in a way that had never existed before, or play a video game.
Yeah. I mean, this is like Wii Sports reminds me of this.
Wii Sports, true. Yep.
That's another. I guess that's kind of another small game that had some level of success.
I think so.
On a console, because it just was, like you say, a new way of playing that usually just used what skills you already had.
Exactly. I think a common thread in all these games is like the barrier of entry is about as low as it can possibly be.
Right? Yeah, I mean that's a big one.
That is sort of the idea, which I think is a lesson that often gets taken in the wrong way, because your target audience changes when you make a game like this, right? Like,
yeah, yes, okay.
So it's more like, okay, so if you take Call of Duty and you say, hey, in order to get more players, we should just lower the barrier to entry as much as humanly possible. That may not necessarily work, because the changes required to achieve that will change your target audience to a point where your existing target audience is no longer your target audience. And
how do you get the both? How do you still get some gamers in there?
Yeah, I mean, that is sort of the idea, but
And that's the struggle Pokemon Go has been dealing with,
Mm-hmm.
is like how to add these deeper, quote unquote, deeper elements like gym battles and I don't know, I forget all the other shit they added, and still keep it approachable enough, because that was what started. That was a big reason we stopped, or she stopped rather, and then I stopped as a result. Was because it looked like there were so many other things you, even if you didn't have to do them, the existence of other features
Mm.
felt like you were missing something all the time just playing
Yeah.
the core game, and or I was doing it wrong. There was this nagging sense gnawing at me that we should be doing all this other stuff, and that I think took a toll on her.
This reminds me of sort of the early discussion we had about like Pac-Man versus Tetris, where just
Mm-hmm.
like having something in place like levels changes the way you think about the game in some way,
Yeah,
right?
I think there's really something to that,
Where, you know, in
to that
Tetris, it's literally just
session
like,
based.
yeah, the number goes up, and if you die, you go back to the beginning and you don't lose anything. There's
Yeah,
no,
there are levels, but it just is the speed
yeah, exactly.
basically going up. That's all.
Pokemon Go. So I think,
Anything more about Pokemon Go to the polls?
I think personally, and we'll talk, I guess I'll brainstorm some ideas for the next one, but personally, I think you should not have ever added the battle system to Pokemon Go, or at least not, I guess I never played it, so it's hard for me to like say anything because I'm mostly guessing about what actually happened. But um,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that like stats and battle system and all that stuff was the right choice. But they also may not have had a choice because Nintendo is sort of has the final say, right, over this stuff.
Well, and there's also the, I think there's an expectation from players that they maybe listened too much to, because it's like, oh, this is Pokemon, we're gonna battle our Pokemon, like that's
Mhm.
part of Pokemon. Instead of saying, well, maybe Pokemon Go is just something different. Maybe it's just about collecting and finding and all that, and that's the focus we should really focus in on, because the battle stuff, like, that's not fun. You gotta like stand next to someone else and tap the thing again. Like, that has nothing to do with me walking around finding Pikachus. That's a totally different type of gameplay that I don't want to do.
Yeah, I agree. Um, I don't know that it's necessarily they listen too much to the community, although maybe that is true. But I do think maybe they lacked imagination.
Yeah, there was yes. I think it was like, yeah, these are features in Pokemon that we're gonna try to just, of course, we're gonna do all the things that are already
Right,
available in other games.
right. In general, that's.
With
I mean, I may be a little too harsh on this front, but in general, I do feel frequently that companies, especially once they get some success, suddenly start lacking imagination in many aspects, uh, which may not be
uh
fair.
I mean, this reminds me of the for a long time, probably still today. There was a If your game was a single player game, it had to have some kind of multiplayer tacked onto it.
Yep.
Like
Yeah.
the Activisions, the Ubisofts, the EAs of the world were like, no, multiplayer is big. We gotta do that too, even though it is very different from everything else you've done
Right.
and is not the developer's strength,
Hmm.
uh, and is a totally different game, essentially, in many cases. Or like, a deathmatch
Minecraft
mode in Last
PvP.
of Us, yeah, yeah, exactly. PvP modes
Hmm.
that are kind of tacked on that are shitty.
Yeah.
This reminds me of that.
Once in a while, there's a good one. Like I think one of the Assassin's Creeds had a really cool PvP mode.
I played them all. I used to be a big Assassin's Creed Creed guy, and the multiplayer was fun. It was fun. But it's one of those things where it's only really fun if you're playing with a group of
Yeah.
friends. Like, because being surprised by some rando stabbing you in the neck from a park bench
Right.
is usually like, fuck. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just got old really
I
fast.
think there's a I think a big part of it is like you said, just like basically an exec just tacking on something because it's like popular, fun, or a buzzword.
Yeah, tachyon ray.
And I think recently games have gotten better at not doing that. Like I see a lot of games now which are only single player where I'm like, I would expect this to have a co-op mode, but it doesn't. Which I'm fine with, but I think a big part of it
co-op is another thing altogether. That's like the middle ground.
Right.
I mean, it is multiplayer, but for some reason, if you're not shooting each other in the head, we don't necessarily think of it as multiplayer.
I think what can happen is there's often a very, very vocal minority about multiplayer. I think these are often like the Minecraft PvP players, or like the Roblox PvP players, who just want to like dunk on people online and like call them names.
I don't know, what do these look like? I've seen Minecraft in action a lot, but I've never seen a PvP server. Like, what is that? What even is that?
I know they exist because one of my friends used to play it a lot as a kid. Apparently.
I mean, like if it's simple to tack on, I guess. But
Minecraft. The thing is, like, Minecraft is already built with, like, PvP already exists in Minecraft, right? Like by default, you can just like attack people because it's sort of built to be multiplayer.
Yeah, yes, it's built to be multiplayer. I mean, that's another thing. Like if you build a single player game and are like, yeah, just add a simple multiplayer mode. I mean, that is a huge level of complication in, connecting to the online service and matchmaking and netcode.
You often have to rewrite like huge parts of your game if you didn't expect this to happen, because you need to sync. Like one of the core problems is you need to actually like have two games now maintain the same state, right? Which sounds easy, but is actually very not easy if you're not prepared for this.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do think a lot of times companies end up lacking imagination, whether that's perception or reality or due to execs or due to whatever.
Well, I think there's a problem that exists everywhere in humanity of feeling the need to do whatever you're doing, thinking that there is a like baseline set of things that is always required, and not really re-examining that each time, and just focusing on your strengths. Like, if I could give life advice, you shouldn't take it from me, but if I could, it would be, focus on your strengths. Don't do as much as you need, I guess, on the other shit. You gotta live and pay taxes, but don't try to be a general all-arounder, because you're never gonna stand out, and you're never gonna.
I think what I would say on that front is that you should not try to improve your weaknesses because you think they'll make you cooler, which I think was a big problem for me, right? It's like
make you cooler?
Yeah, in the sense that like, okay, like maybe you're not good at talking to people. I guess that was sort of my problem, right? But like I was like, oh, I need to be cool. Like in order to be the cool person I want to be, I need to get better at talking to people, right? Yes, exactly. Where it's like, but there's also a level where it's like, okay, if you're really not good at talking to people to the point that like you can't get your work done or you can't order food, you need to improve those. And I think that's what you're saying, right? Where it's like you need to get to a baseline for your weaknesses that you can exist as a human.
Exactly.
But you don't need to improve beyond that. You don't need to improve beyond that unless you have a good reason to, I guess. And like being cooler is not a good reason.
Well, and being cool or, attracting people to you or having people like you often is they like you because of the strengths you have or the things that you do that you naturally gravitate towards, rather than just like, he can hold a conversation and he can do all the normal things.
Right.
I don't know. Exactly. And some of those things become less important, especially when, it's like you, Regal, may not want to be friends with the sort of person that is, so awesomely great at making small talk or whatever.
Right.
like you're not going to find your people unless you really lean into the stuff you actually like.
Right.
And hopefully, you actually want to get good at as a result.
I guess also one of the things is it'd be hard for me to go back in time and tell myself this, just because in many ways, like I didn't really understand what I liked or what I was good at, right, for a long time.
Yeah, a lot of people don't.
Which is why I think it's it's important to just always keep trying to expand beyond your comfort zone. But the most important thing is like learning what the signals are that tell you like this is not for you or this is for you, right?
How do you get that step?
Yeah, I think a lot of what the big problem I see is like a lot of people have mixed or have like really bad ways to evaluate what the signals are. Because like, I'm sure you've experienced this too. A lot of people are like, oh, well, I watched this kind of movie and I liked it, but this isn't really my kind of thing. Like, I don't really see myself as a person who enjoys, pop music. That's, maybe this one song, but pop music is for like teenagers, that's not me.
Yeah, it goes against my self-perception or whatever.
I think that's where you run into a lot of problems as a person when you're like refuse to accept that you like or dislike certain things because of your image of yourself.
I mean, me starting to work with animals is an example of that. Like it was a blind spot for me. I love animals and have always, and always want to sit at the zoo and watch animals all day. But part of me was like, oh, that's not me. I couldn't do that for a job. Like I couldn't do that. Well, what would my parents think? Like, who gives a shit with it?
Right. Well, to be fair,
at this point especially,
it doesn't pay very much, right? So you could not have retired a billionaire like you have now.
It's true. I'm very lucky. I get to do this the way I'm doing it for sure. Right. It's not. The world isn't always set up to just do the thing you want to do.
Right.
It really isn't.
Yeah, unfortunately. I think you can make almost anything a career these days with YouTube, but you have to also have a certain kind of personality. Not only just YouTube, but like YouTube and Instagram and whatever. Like you can really do your own thing, but you also have to have like the self-promotion and marketing gene. To make that happen.
Do. And sort of a strongness of
yes, like
a self-confidence or that you can put up with all of the shit that comes with it.
Yeah,
because you're gonna get psychos, giving you death threats no matter what you work on. Almost, they're shitty people insulting you on the internet, and whereas I would cry and run away, Mr. Beast would just get stronger.
What does Mr. Beast do anyway? I only know that he has a lot of money and he gives away a lot of money. Does he have
what does Mr. Beast do?
Does he have like
I really don't
activity
know.
that he performs other than money?
Yeah, he organizes and puts on like weird stunts and competitions.
Oh, okay.
Like
got it.
Like just fun, zany one-time things, as I understand it.
I see.
Like Squid Game.
Oh, okay, that's cool. I guess he's like an event organizer. All right.
Yeah, but and then there's always a charitable aspect to it. Yeah. Like the winners get this money for their school or whatever.
Do you think it's weird?
Everybody gets some.
I don't know if I should think it's weird or very normal that like all the biggest popular YouTubers are like white guys with beards. Is that like?
I mean, I guess it's no surprise that the first run of most popular YouTubers are white guys because of our past history with any money-making enterprise being carved out.
I mean, but it's not
by
like
them for them
they're
first.
The result of like systemic advantages, right? Probably.
I mean,
they're literally just popular because they're popular, right?
I guess I don't know.
I mean, I guess they look like actors, so that's where they get their advantage. Are like,
I guess I'm thinking of like when it comes to a decision of an executive at YouTube or whatever to be like, who do I choose? There is who do I choose to promote or whatever? There is an ingrained, systemic racism there baked into those decisions that trickles down to these, white guys being still the
maybe. I mean, I
big
would actually
popular
say if it's a conscious
celebrities.
decision, it would actually be the opposite. Like all the big companies now make a massive effort, perhaps maybe even too massive to like front diversity, right?
Yeah.
But I do think there's maybe a lot of subconscious bias that leaks in.
I think there's subconscious bias, and I think there is I think it's just where wealth is more concentrated.
Yeah.
There is more opportunity to spend time and money to become these personalities.
Yeah.
Right?
That's
I would think.
true.
These are my suppositions.
No, that's definitely true.
The beard part?
Hmm?
I don't know. I don't know about the beard part.
I mean, not all of them
beards
have
are just popular now, right?
Yeah,
aren't beards really big now?
I guess so. I don't know. I don't go outside.
Yeah, I think beards are having a moment again.
Also, I mean, what I said is not actually.
I hate beards. I
true,
shave.
Right? There's actually a ton of non-white guy popular ones, but at least to me, it seems like the ones that really get like naturally or like organically very popular are massively tilted towards white guys, which is not.
I think that rings true for me too, and me seeing YouTube homepage, but that's about it.
Which I don't think that's necessarily like evil or a problem even, but it is just strange to me that it has happened this way. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, they say that in Hollywood too, right? That they're trying to be more diverse, and there is some of that, but you look at the biggest movies and the biggest movie stars, it's still primarily white, right?
Exactly.
So,
I don't know.
I think all these things affect each other.
I do think
driven by the
connection
same systems.
with Hollywood is probably the big one. Like I think maybe there's like a psychological predisposition that like a certain type of, it's like the lab coat thing, right? Like because you see all the celebrities are already white, then you're more predisposed to like expect that the next celebrity also be, or that the white person would be the next celebrity. But I don't know how that would affect YouTube.
And there's the reality of how you get famous is often by who you know or who is in your family. And again, that's going to be an advantage white people generally.
It could also be
past.
like a
because of the
domain
past
thing, right? Because
domain,
audience wealth, basically what you said, where it's like the people that are like people generally tend to watch people that look like them, right? I'm certainly no exception to that.
Oh, there's that. The people who have the opportunity to follow YouTubers and such.
And
both. I was saying in terms of the creators have the opportunity, but that also follows true. Too.
Yeah.
But yeah, that fits too for sure. Beards are just cool, man. I think.
Are you a beard guy? Do you believe in beards?
No, I always shave. I'm always clean shaven when I can be. They itch.
I mean, I can't. I'm unable to grow a real meaningful beard, but
you've got something going on right now.
I'm also too lazy to shave, so
you got like a mustache beard combo going.
Well, it's not.
Is that the extent of it?
This is the extent of it, and also it's because I'm too lazy to shave, not because.
Yeah, I mean I do that too, but my wife will complain if I don't.
Yeah, understandable. All right, let's try
kissing somebody with a mustache sounds tough.
I mean, doesn't food just get stuck in there? Like, I don't know.
It does. I saw a buddy earlier this. Was it this month? Yeah, earlier this month in Minneapolis that grew a huge beard, and he's like, "Yeah, my food is." I constantly have food in there and smells and things. I'm like, sounds gross. But he's like, yeah, but I hate shaving every day. So
yeah, well, that's definitely true. I mean, people who have body hair just like it seems tough if you don't like it.
Yeah, I have some body hair. I don't. I mean, we can get into it. We should probably have a whole episode about this.
Oh yeah, that would be great. That's what the people want. All right, let's try to synthesize some lessons. I still think that puzzle games are heavily represented here. I guess we talked about this already, but
I think it's worth restating. But yeah, I think you're right. Puzzle games tend to have all of these other things, though, right? Yeah. Like the session-based gameplay. I was gonna say they're simplified things, but not always. but all these are. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think maybe one thing is like, I think people that play these games, to be honest, like people that watch TV are included here. Like they want to be engrossed in something, right? They want to like have their mind occupied, not just like sit around.
Maybe.
Yeah, I guess.
But
maybe.
a lot of people just watch TV with their phone out too. So
Well, I guess.
and
That's true.
they're just killing time, and that's fun for them.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just like a turn your brain off thing, I think.
Right. Which I guess playing a game is actually similar to turning your brain. It's like distracting.
It can be
yourself
engaging
from,
without.
yeah, from like other things, like from real life things, right?
Okay, yes, that's a good one.
It's like occupies.
I want to forget all of the bad shit that's happening in life.
Yeah,
for a while. Yeah, I mean, podcasts help with that for me too.
Yeah, that's certainly true. Although for me, it's when I'm just listening to something, or most of the time just watching something, like it's hard for me to stay focused on that for the whole time. Which is why games.
Yeah, just listening, I agree.
Yeah.
I watch movies and love watching movies. I have like a problem where if a TV is on in my line of sight, in my cone of vision, I keep looking at it.
No, I think everyone has.
Just
I also
drives
have that
me in.
problem. I think everyone.
Okay,
does
but
that.
you don't like to watch shows or movies, though, right?
That's true. I don't like the act of watching in general, but it's not like I'm
Do you
against.
watch anime?
Huh?
Do you watch anime?
I watch anime once in a while. Yeah, I watched
but not
Butcher
like
the Rock recently.
You just said, and you just read a manga, right?
Yes, I read.
So you read manga sometimes.
It is true. I'm trying to replace my manga as my new attempt to fill in empty time.
Oh, okay.
But I did read a really great manga recently. I read it.
I know you mentioned it on
5.5 times in 1 week, actually.
You read the whole thing 5.5 times? Wow. Okay. I will check it out.
Actually, you might like it. It's kind of funny. What were we talking about? Anyway, yeah.
Synthesizing, yes.
Yeah. So I think
puzzle games.
It being a puzzle game does help sort of engross the brain, because like, look, when you're playing Zelda or whatever, it also engrosses your brain, but what's filling your brain is like contextual stuff, right? Like, it's like, the water temple that I went to earlier requires a bow. I don't have a bow or whatever. Go look around, and then when you find a bow, it's like, I remember I'd go to the water temple to kill Armos or whatever because I have a bow.
Yeah, or I discovered this cave and it's got its own twists and turns and enemy types and things I gotta think about how to approach.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe the part that's daunting to people, that like, by having like a self-contained puzzle, you can sort of fill in the brain elements without having to add a bunch of like greater game state context stuff. I wonder if there's other
and it's all there on the board, as you said.
And I think maybe that's also what separates from action games, because like the genre I would guess to be the most popular would be like an action game, right? Like no brain required.
Yeah, I mean,
click ahead and see it explode, or whatever. But
yeah, that was I was thinking about earlier, like even the Vampire Survivors example, or Pac-Man, or fucking Asteroids, or whatever. Like they're simple, endless games that you could play and play and play, but we don't seem to see those come up.
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, those are
I think
also
they're just
popular, but not the same.
Yeah, I think they just they probably just require just enough paying attention and speed, and if you're not already a gamer that is used to that controller movements being natural, it's just much more. It takes much more of your brain capacity to do. Maybe
that's
I don't
a
know.
good point, actually. I think one thing we didn't talk about at all was like sort of the part of barrier to entry is like the control scheme, right? And more specific, it's like one thing most of these games have in common, I think maybe the only outlier is like Tetris and like some of the phone mini games, but they're all they're not even like turn-based necessarily. They have no like time element at all. Like
Right, there's no time pressure.
Or there's no time pressure, and there's no like skill, like physical skill check at all, right? Whereas in a game like Asteroids, you're sort of the skill check is being applied when you're like turning a certain rate or like fighting at a certain time, whatever. That stuff is all gone.
Yeah. Which is why Tetris is still sort of a little bit of a mystery to me. I guess it's simple, it's directional buttons. So you get, that's pretty easy to get, and there's one button to turn.
Yeah,
there may be one button to turn back.
I feel like we're missing something with Tetris. Like there is something about Tetris that's not covered by our hypotheses here somehow. I feel like there's something like there's some magic of Tetris that's like specifically engrossing to a lot of people that I'm not sure I understand.
Yeah, I think there probably are other puzzle games that get close to this, like Snood.
Or Bejeweled.
It's like Puzzle Bobble or Bust a Move, you know that game?
I think we talked about it before. I forget what we discussed.
It's basically like an Arkanoid type game, but it's not on a timer in the same way.
Right.
It's turn-based.
Right. Yeah, I wonder.
And Arkanoid requires like an analog entry method, because you can move at different speeds, not just one speed left and right.
Now that I think about it, I think one thing with Tetris is that it can feel like physically it feels very satisfying to play, like a rhythm game. In that your movements are all discrete, right? And you can move very quickly, but you can I'll put it this way, you can move faster than you can see. That makes sense. Like because your inputs are all like you can see what inputs you need to do ahead of time. So you can be like, I need to go left, spin, drop, right?
Yes.
You can see that. You can make all those movements before. You don't have to be like, the difference with an Asteroids game is like, you need to turn a little bit, then you need to look and be like, oh, I turned this much, then you need to turn a little bit more, right?
Yeah, you're saying with Tetris, there are, once you played it a while, you kind of just have the instincts.
Yeah, exactly. It's like you can build up like some kind of like future instinct planning, fast
muscle memory
thing. Yeah, that's not necessarily easy to get in a lot of games.
Yeah, and it's more, I guess there's a limited number of them in Tetris versus an Asteroids. Right. I think it's a little less complicated.
Discrete movements, right? There's only like 11 cells or whatever, 11 columns, so you can plan ahead to your heart's content. And it's like
self-contained. What, 5 types of shapes?
Yeah. 7, I think.
Oh, look at this guy. 7 Tetronymos?
That's what they call them. Did you know that Tetris is actually like the person who invented Tetris has great regrets about selling the rights of the game or whatever? It's basically
not surprising.
It's basically a classic like capitalist acquisition problem where they like there was a small thing that got sold for a small amount of money, and then the company who had nothing to do with its creation just did capitalist magic on it and made a ton of money.
Yeah, if you have enough money, you can take someone else's idea and make all sorts of money off of it, and they'll make some, but probably not that much. It's a good system.
I think
Yeah, he's a Russian developer, right?
Guy. He might still be alive, actually.
Tetris developer.
Pretty old when he made it, though.
Alexei Pajitnov. A Soviet. Oh, this is in the 85.
Yeah, he was old. I thought he was already like 40 when he made it, so he's probably dead by now.
This is still the end of the USSR times.
Yeah. I'm generally like fairly pro capitalism to a reasonable extent, but there is one if there's one big problem, it's that the people that get the richest in capitalism are the people who like are moving the capitalist game pieces around, not the people that are actually producing anything. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
that is a problem, isn't it?
It's
This is
like,
kind of a big problem.
yeah. Like fundamentally,
Might even be a big enough problem for it to be a bad system.
well, the thing is like that doesn't necessarily have to arise from the core ideas of capitalism. I think people don't point a lot of fingers to this aspect of it. They point to like, you know, private property is evil or whatever, like profit is evil, which I don't necessarily agree with. But the people that get the richest in capitalism are like the people that give out loans and like
Yeah,
buy real estate
yeah,
and like shuffle numbers around in finance.
VCs.
It's like that's like those people are not really contributing anything to society, right? To the level of the people who are actually building the house.
They're patrons of the arts.
Sure.
Except not really.
Yeah. Anyway, because I never really thought about this, but then I started realizing that like every, because like a lot of sports teams are going up for sale, and I started realizing like every single one of the potential buyers are like, oh, they're a hedge fund owner, oh, they're a real estate mogul. But what that really means is they just like bought something and sold it, didn't actually do anything, right?
No.
Didn't actually perform any actions of value. They just like moved some numbers around and became
and so all the people in the world who are like, you know what, I actually want to contribute are never going to be that person.
Yeah. Well,
so you're only going to get the best.
I mean, like Bill Gates doesn't count, right? Like Bill Gates actually did something, but
yeah,
you know, yeah, for the most part, they're all just like number movers.
Yeah, that sucks.
It sure does. Could have been you.
Could have been me. It never could have been me. I don't have the chutzpah.
I do have a thing I want to talk about, which is these are these the games that are going to make the most money? I feel like execs often make this bad distinction. This goes beyond games to other fields as well, where it's like, oh, obviously, if we become more popular, we'll make more money. Do you think that's true here?
One thing we didn't say is that almost all of these games are essentially free.
Right.
They're all free games for the most part.
Obviously, they can be monetized. Like Candy Crush monetizes giga hard, right, and makes a ton of money. But
I think Tetris was like maybe a bundle game with the original Game Boy.
Yep. But so let's, you know, you make Solitaire and you put on everybody's phone and you have like, you know, 500 million players per day. Or we don't have to say Solitaire. Like you make Wordle, you sell it to New York Times. Can New York Times make money off Wordle? Like realistically? Assuming, you know, even at the peak of its popularity, like what are you? Is
I assume it just helps them sell subscriptions because I bet there are additional features if you have a subscription.
What additional features
is
can
my
there
guess.
even be?
Probably sharing or leaderboards with your friends,
Sure,
kind of thing.
I guess, yeah.
I don't know.
You can run ads on it, right? That's sort of the
you can run ads on it.
That's sort of the baseline way to make money. If you have users and nothing else, you just run ads. But
I don't know, the major news publications are they, you know, we I think they're still trying to figure out their business model these days, aren't they?
That being said, like, you know, purely like the idea of just having eyeballs on something, running ads on it and making money is not unsound, right? Like that's fine, but
yeah, I mean, yeah.
Can you spin a company off running ads on a solitaire game that everyone plays? Like, also, you know,
right.
To be fair, are these that irreplaceable that if someone makes a free version that doesn't have ads, that you can somehow compete with that? Or like,
it seems like it. It seems like it's there's a possibility for a lot of these things, I think.
Right.
And we just haven't seen them yet. But yeah, I don't know. Folks, I don't know. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.
Life is hard.
I would say maybe this is a good thought experiment. I don't have the answer either. It could be that you can make plenty of money, but the idea that like having a lot of users, expanding your user base to include as many people as possible may not necessarily be the way to make more money for your game.
Right. It's not. There's a great example of this. That'll come to me for patch notes maybe. But
I'll look forward
there's I remember in business classes this discussion, there's like a tipping point of if you're just giving away your game, you may get, or if you're just giving away your product or whatever, you may get way more people to engage with it, but you're not going to necessarily make money and stay in business.
Right.
So yeah, I think you're right. Like just having a billion users play at once or whatever isn't necessarily, or even play every day, as long as if there's not a way to make money off of it. But I wish that were more what things were like.
Well, I guess it depends. I mean, it's sort of, I guess it depends on how you see, where you see the purpose of your game being, right? Like if it's something that where you're really just trying to deliver an experience to the person where you're like filling their time, then like I guess there's no need to invest a ton into like the quality of your product. Like I think running ads on it is reasonable if you need to do that.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to deliver like a more in-depth experience to someone who is more invested in the game and wants more out of it than just or let's say like your target audience is people who are more interested in actually playing your game beyond just filling their time, then I do think, at that point you need to consider expanding your game's player base versus what it costs your existing player base or your target player base, right? Because the people that are most invested are people generally that are most likely to pay money, right? And those are
absolutely,
those are the people that you want to try to keep happy, theoretically.
And we've seen in the free-to-play era that the core place you're making your money is from big whales, right?
Yeah, well,
generally
that's if so that's only if your monetization model is a certain way, right?
Allows that to even be a thing.
But if you make Stardew Valley, that can't be true, right? Because they can't, like, one person can't pay more money than the game costs, no matter how much they love it.
Yeah, you're just like an upfront game cost. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, in the free to play, but like what I generally believe is that the free to play model is good because it allows people who like your game the most to pay more for it, right?
Yeah, I think it's generally good. I think the way it's implemented can be a real horror show, but
right.
But yeah, I like the idea and principle of like every game is a demo until you are ready to pay.
Right. The problem, as you said, is with implementation, right? Because it's not a demo; it's sort of a vortex, right? Of like, it's sort
also, I'd like
a slot machine.
Sorry, go
rather than the demo.
Huh?
It's more of a slot machine than a demo, right? Where it's
explain that.
Where what you're paying for is not, here, try part of the game, and then if you like it, try the full game. It's more like, oh, look at this shiny new thing that you can pay an uncertain amount of money for. But then next month there's going to be another shiny new thing, and then so on and so forth. And also, I think there's a core issue where the people that pay the most are not necessarily the people that like your game the most. That may not be an issue.
Yeah, not necessarily.
Don't count most, right? Like, I do think maybe there's a stronger correlation between people who pay a lot and people who like your game a lot, but that also may not be true.
I mean, there's the whole discussion of people in life situations, or gambling addicts,
Yeah.
or people that just have poor what's the word,
Impulse control.
yeah, impulse control about money. And there are ways to play with that in how you design and present your game to really keep them in your system.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I think
I want to say one thing about this. The where I wish I knew where the money was. My impression is free to play game models are where the money is
what do you mean
currently.
by the money?
Where most revenue is being made in video
Is that
games
true?
versus, yeah, well, I wonder.
Okay.
I don't know.
I just looked up the numbers
But I
for
know
gross.
but I know as that era came around,
Mhm.
the ceiling of what you could make for a pay up front $60
Yeah.
game went down and down and down. Like and in fact,
Really?
only the really big companies and the big games really end up making money, like Call of Duty makes money, FIFA makes money, Madden makes money, but uh anything lower than a mid-range, like an Assassin's Creed level game, a whole lot of those games are just not making money
Can you
or
think
not
of?
enough.
I'm curious. This is probably very easy to find. Can you think of like a recent $40 game or $60 game that wasn't up to that level?
Hmm.
That was also like well received, generally speaking.
I can't without really looking at the sales data. I'd just be kind of guessing. But I mean,
Let's try
games at the level of like
Octopath Traveler 2. How about that?
Octopath Traveler or like Horizon Zero Dawn was a really well
Was it? I thought that
regarded.
was very poorly received.
Really?
Maybe I'm wrong.
Where
I may be
where did
confusing
you
with
see
something
that?
else.
Are you confusing it with all the Reddit threads where they don't like girls in games?
Yeah, maybe. So let's see. Octopath Traveler
No, it
2.
was I mean, it made a sequel and it was like a core PlayStation game, I believe.
Gross revenue 9.3 million. Okay, you're right. Actually, that's significantly lower than like a low quality free to play game.
Yeah, I know this is not the greatest thing to look at, but what's the Metacritic? 89 on Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah, 89.
Oh, I didn't look. I was looking at
Seems well
Octopath. What
regarded.
is the Horizon?
Yeah, I mean, Octopath Traveler is another level of like, that's an RPG game too, so it's like it's gonna make a smaller audience than an action game.
Yeah, that's true. 60 million revenue for Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah, that is comparable to like a pretty mid level free to play game.
Yeah, it's not the hundreds of millions that a
Yeah,
Call of Duty is making,
that's interesting.
or the billion
Did you?
plus.
I don't remember if you had a conclusion from this.
Huh?
Did you have a conclusion
What I
when
started talking
looking at
about?
this? Yeah, when you started talking about this. I might have cut you off.
uh, in the question of what if we were to make a game that did this, like
Yeah.
what would be required, and I don't know. I guess I'm not sure. I'm not sure how it's connected.
I think there's probably more to it than just monetization, Like I think a lot of these games are making less money because maybe there's more piracy, for example.
Hmm.
Maybe there's
Well, and I also feel like with the wider audience, if presented with the opportunity to pay $1 or $5, would they just be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm not going to do this, or I am going to do this? Like, would my mom pay for mahjong after all these years?
Oh, I see. I mean, probably not just because of the expectation. If you're starting over, maybe, right? But that's obviously hard to do. Right? At this
Yeah, I
point,
don't
I
know.
think what would happen is someone would just make a free one, right? Because it's not licensed, which sort of is the other problem.
Right. Yeah, licensing.
I do want to go back to the monetization thing though, because I think there's, I do think the model of a $60 box game is not good. Like I think there's sort of a romantic idealization of this just because it's how things used to be, but I think this model does not do a good job of making money, number one, and two, putting the game in the hands of the people that want it the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was a boon to both players and companies when other options arose.
Right. That being
Because
said,
yeah,
though,
it doesn't
like
make any sense.
there is the way free to play games are monetized is a problem, right? Because you really don't want to apply that to like what is supposed to be sort of a single player or encapsulated experience, like an RPG or an action game, like an Uncharted, right? That you don't want interruptions about paying more money during your
No,
playthrough of Uncharted. So
it'll take you out of it.
I,
Yeah, and yeah, the $60 game thing, as I understand it, because of how expensive games are to make, $60 is actually kind of low for
I
for
agree. I agree.
for actually paying back the cost of
But
what it took to make a game.
that's because so obviously this is
It doesn't make it a good model to upfront charge. I'm just
right.
saying that is an extra part of it. It's not just them saying, "Yeah, we want to charge you 6 times as much as you'd pay for a movie or whatever."
Right. Well, the thing is, obviously, I don't think this is true, but obviously, if you lower the price and more people buy it, then you could make more money, right? It's not that $60 is a magical break point, although it might
No,
be.
no, and I mean, a lot of games there is a sliding scale on what the prices are nowadays.
I w-
And there, actually, and there always have been to some extent. There was like, I remember early PC adventure games being like $20, not $60 or whatever, and I just like an expectation of the genre or the type of game being worth it or not. Whereas like Nintendo games were always $60. There's like that's what we do
right. I do
until
wonder.
now.
I mean, the core problem that we see is sort of like someone who really wants to. Well, there's two problems, right? One, there's an expectation in these free to play games that the games don't end, right? Like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
if you're one of the reasons you feel okay about paying like $200 into the game is that, well, I'm going to be playing this game a year from now, 2 years from now, right? That
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
investment continues to exist. Obviously, that's frequently broken, but
Right.
that expectation is there and it's usually met. Whereas when you buy Skyrim, I guess Skyrim is a bad example. When you buy, Horizon Zero Dawn, you don't expect that you'll be playing it 2 years from now, most likely, right?
No,
Which is
definitely not.
why the cost makes more sense to be a movie. But I do wonder if there's a way to have a player who cannot afford $60 that really wants to play your game to play your game, and to have someone who would be who has a lot of money who really likes your game to have them pay like $300 for the game, right? And essentially buy it for 5 other people
Right.
somehow, right? I don't.
Yeah. How the.
That's a difficult question, but I do think if you use a little imagination, maybe there's a path forward there where that's possible and meaningful for everybody involved.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It is interesting. I am. I feel as though we are still going to see an evolution of the business models of games for some time to come.
Hopefully.
Like we're still reeling from. I say this a lot, but we're still reeling from the invention of the internet, even now.
Right.
Yeah, but that's all I have to say about that. I think the only thing I want to add to this list of why small games, mom games, are what they are, like we talked about puzzle games, talked about low barrier to entry. I think going along with that, oh yeah, and the short sessions that you don't have to leave and come back to. And on top of that, the perception of it being short, the perception of this being like, I can drop this anytime if I get a phone call, or if I get my shit together and start working again in 10 minutes, I'll do that, even if it's not true.
Right.
That when you boot up Breath of the Wild, you're saying, I'm gonna at least play for half an hour.
Right. Exactly.
That's a hard, having the no prior knowledge, and in many cases just the ease of getting it, the pre-installedness, the smartphone top chartsness.
Technically, from a technical perspective, I think the load time is also important, right? Just click a button and the game appears. You don't need to
Yes.
fire up anything, wait for a loading screen.
Don't need to go through options.
Yeah.
Don't need to make sure my video card is the newest driver.
Can you think of other games you've played that fit this criteria of being easy to drop and open?
It's hard for me to say because so for Switch games, for example, like it has an endless, you can just click it off and it'll save state you.
Yeah. But when you open it again, especially if it's like 3 hours from there, don't you feel like sometimes it's like there's so much stuff that I forgot that, you feel some kind of like pressure that you're not, you don't want to pick it back up again unless you have time to sink into it, just because you have to
remember. I mean, maybe not as much for me, but I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I'm trying to think of a good example though of what you asked, and nothing's coming to mind.
Hard.
Just
it's
like really easy to put down
examples, right? Like almost all the games that we play don't, like, sort of by necessity break this as the first thing to break, right? Because to have a more complex game, you need to have more complex.
I mean, I think it comes down to like the session based thing, and like Dota or League of Legends technically is that, but the minimum time is like half an hour, right? Like 40 minutes. Yeah. So it doesn't really fit the bill. It's got to be short session-based things.
I think like a long-running simulation or builder type game, like SimCity or The Sims or
or Civilization. Yeah. You can kind of pick those up and drop them whenever.
That only works though because you sort of have a long-standing knowledge of what you were already doing, right? Because it's not like the knowledge changes with every item or every dungeon or whatever. It's like you've been building the same city for long enough that you haven't forgotten what you were doing, right?
Right. Or I can just go back into whatever mode I was in.
Right.
Yeah. Have you played one of those games in any...
I played a lot of...
recently at all?
I've been playing Stellaris again recently. I played RimWorld a lot in my time.
Yeah, I've heard really good things, but I've never tried to jump into one of those big space 4X games.
I don't necessarily recommend Stellaris. I have a lot to say, I guess. I think the base game is fine. I think Stellaris sort of tries to capture the, infinite size of space. But things end up growing out of control, basically. Which is kind of the point. I guess it is kind of the point, but
things. You mean your civilization, your empire becomes too unwieldy?
Well, sort of. They make good tools to deal with that, but also like there's a lot of scaling bonuses and stuff. So like resources end up being not a concern pretty quickly.
Right? Oh, okay.
You end up having. And this is a bigger problem with mods. The base game does a better job of this, I think. But in general, I would say like you quickly reach a point where there are no limits to what you can do. Basically, you become like giga powerful because like they're stacking bonuses on top of each other, essentially.
So is the game over, or has it just become different?
No, yeah, it's just a totally different game. So actually, like I've recently been playing a game called Against the Storm, which is sort of a session-based city builder where it focuses on the early survival aspect, and as soon as you pass the survival check, basically, the game ends and you start over.
Interesting. So it just is like, that's the part that we're playing.
That's
sense.
Exactly what they say, right? Their fundamental idea is like, that's the fun part. And I think it does circumvent a lot of these problems where, once you're set up, you just have all the resources you could want. RimWorld, my experience with RimWorld is very similar, where it's like, well, you don't have a lot of resources in the beginning, but obviously over time, the game is made so you can grow them. And so you have all the resources now. and then you have all the resources, and then the game becomes fundamentally different, right? Because you're no like the survival part is totally gone because you're stable. That's sort of the point. But
yep. Yeah, I like that part of the game.
Cut that out directly.
It is. It's an interesting idea. It kind of reminds me of the discussion we had about the lack of imagination of where we think we need certain parts of games that maybe we don't.
I agree.
Anyway, my voice is running out, so I think we got to call.
We're about time.
Call it.
Thanks for listening to episode 17 of Open Betas, where we talked. At least 40% was on topic, right?
Yeah. The life of games or the game of life?
Yes. Anyway.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, thanks for we talked at least 40% about small games, mom games, I guess is our.
Yeah, mommy games.
I see. Okay. Very interesting.
Okay.
So next, in a episode, I don't know about next episode, but coming up soon, we'll have a special guest. Talk about Pokemon Go.
Ms. Swim Fan.
Yep.
Jump Fan.
Fan.
Well, I'll try to figure out what she wants to call herself.
All right. You can look forward to that.
Yeah.
And I guess I will put out a Against the Storm video object. At some point.
Regal's rants?
No, it will be positive mostly.
It can be a positive
I'm gonna
rant.
break my own rule here and destroy the thing that makes the game cool, and like part of it is going to be built around designing an endless mode in a game that's specifically created to not have endless mode, which would be funny.
All right, I'm into it.
Yep.
I'll watch. I'll like and subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
See you later.
Bye.